Like at 15, I was like, I want to record. That's all I want to do. I'm going to constantly do it. It becomes more than a hobby, and it becomes also, it feels weird to monetize something that you love so much.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. Have you ever dreamed of going viral, schmoozing with the stars, swimming in piles of virtual likes and shares, retweets and smiley faces? I mean, who doesn't want fan mail, right? Our guest today is fortunate enough to have experienced all of that, but here's the thing. He wasn't really dreaming of it. In fact, as it turns out, most people who go viral weren't. Generally, they're living their lives like the rest of us, chasing passions, making ends meet, and then one day, this one part of their world blows up. Today, Mike Bridavsky, owner of Russian recording studio and dad to world-famous cat Lil Bub, shares his story. This story includes Bub, of course, but certainly doesn't start there. Mike has been an entrepreneur since he was 3 years old and knew exactly what kind of business he wanted to run by the age of 15. Bub didn't come along for another 20 years. So as always, let's start from the beginning.
Well, speaking just generally about entrepreneurialism,
You did good with that.
Is it entrepreneur? I'm not going to try it again, but I'm going to go with entrepreneurialism. And I was thinking back before we had started this conversation to when I was a little kid, and I have this very vivid memory of staying at my grandparents' house. Just a little background. I come from a Russian immigrant family. I was conceived in Russia and the first in my family born in the States. Huh. So my grandparents were completely Russian, no English, and they stayed in like this seniors apartment complex in Cleveland that's all Russian, old Russian people. And I'd stay there for the weekend, and I just remember, this is one of my earliest memories, I guess. I was probably like 3 or 4, maybe 5, and all the old Russian people would go like walking around, just taking really slow strolls around the parking lot. And there was like this island, like sort of a garden bed, but with trees and like all these plants and bushes with some of those berries in there. Yeah. And I would set up in there and pick all the berries and put them in a little cup, and then a bunch of leaves and put them in a cup, and just like made a store. And I was like super excited about this. And all the old people would come up and then buy stuff for me, and I'd be like, okay, I'll go get this for you. And then I'd give them like 4 berries and 2 leaves. And then in the end, I'd make all this money, and I'd show my grandfather, and I'd be really excited. And it was just like this super fun game for me. And then, so I was thinking back to that, and I was like, oh, that's sort of this, I've always just wanted to do my own thing, and just I guess that's that entrepreneurial spirit coming out in me very young. Yeah. And there's just something that was exciting about that to me. And so, even as a kid.
And did that continue, like, from that as you grew up into teenager and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I tried I'm sure I had a bunch of failed businesses as a kid, like the lawn mowing thing never quite worked out. Yeah. And that's sort of, I guess, growing up and figuring out what you want to do with your life and realizing that it's not just the entrepreneurial spirit. You got to combine that drive with something you like. And so eventually I started playing music pretty early on, violin at 10, piano and guitar at 12, and was really into it, and was mostly into like writing my own music. And then I discovered multi-track recording in high school. For those of you that don't know, that's the ability to record one instrument and then listen back to that instrument and record another one over it, and then listen back to those both and keep adding instruments and basically building a song.
Yeah. Which was really done on tape when we were in high school. Yeah. Now digital, it's a lot easier, obviously, with the GarageBand and whatever. But
back then it was like a challenge to figure out how to do it, and it was done with a 4-track or 8-track cassette recorder. So I had that in my basement, and then that's all I did. My buddies would go out drinking and partying, but I just stayed in and would invite like friends over to record and do all this stuff. And then I was like, this is what I want to do for a living. Like, I could probably make a living doing this. And I decided that at about age 15. and was done. That was it. That's what I was going to do, and that's how I decided to go to IU because of their audio program. And I think the first time I got paid to record a band, I was like 17. For something about just the idea of having my own business was super exciting to me.
Yeah.
And it's like the two sides, like I said before, just the desire to have my own business and have full ownership over something, every aspect of it, you know, sort of like the name and then the logo and then all that stuff was just really fun to me. It's like customizing your own thing, you know?
Yeah, totally.
In a way, and I compare recording, owning a studio to like video game RPGs, role-playing games where you like collect like all the stuff. It's a sort of same sort of thing of like customizing your own thing, and a business is like the ultimate customization of anything.
Yeah. I think there's two sides to it, right? It's like the entrepreneurial side, which could be pulling berries off a tree and leaves and selling them to the folks walking by, or it could be, you know, having this beautiful recording studio that we're inside, and it doesn't matter the topic, it's the entrepreneurial thing, right?
Right.
And then there's the topic.
Yeah, and the important thing is for the thing that you're entrepreneurializing. Boom. That was a pretty good use of that
was
word.
great.
Thanks. And I pronounced it pretty well. My R's are a little hard, but so entrepreneurializing. So that's the thing, is finding the thing that you truly care about enough to go through all the non-exciting part of entrepreneurialism and owning a business. But the recording thing I was into from the beginning and have always sort of charged for my services even before I went to school and everything, you know, not a lot, but...
But you knew how to do that, you were willing to do that, and understood that relationship between the skills you have, the thing you're providing, and the fact that someone needs to compensate for it.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was hard, and I think that's the hardest thing, is when you find the thing you love that you're going to entrepreneurialize the most, it's like I don't want to say hobby because it's more than a hobby, it's like you're...
It feels hobby-esque, though, if you really love it,
but for
right?
me, you know, it was my life mission goal. Like at 15, I was like, I want to record. That's all I want to do. I'm going to constantly do it. It becomes more than a hobby, and it becomes also, it feels weird to monetize something that you love so much.
Yeah.
And so when I first started recording bands, like officially, like I graduated from school, I started my studio, Russian Recording, in 2003, March of 2003. It was in Brown County. And then I was like, finding bands that I loved that I just could not wait to record. Like I'd wake up at 8 in the morning when I first started to clean the whole place up, make it just perfect, and provide the best. And I'd work from 9 a.m. to like 3 in the morning. That's how much I cared about what I was doing.
Absolutely.
And I felt guilty charging for it because it was like
like
my dream come true. Like someone's gonna pay me to do this.
Yeah.
And it took years to finally like be okay with that and not feel guilty for charging for something I love to do, but it's a crazy amount of work, like, and obviously, you know, like that's where that whole business side comes in. It's like, so my problem is that I got carried away with just doing what I love, and the idea of having a business and customizing it and having a logo and a name and all this, and the missing part, the part that we talked earlier about, that there's this one piece of entrepreneurialism that I'm sort of missing, my brain doesn't really register, is the whole business side of like, does your business work on paper? You know, when I meet with my accountant or I meet with someone, they're like, okay, you're doing this and you get clients, but are you making any money? Like, is this profitable? And that thing, I was like, oh, I have to think about that, don't I? And that's been sort of a problem with all my businesses. They've never made any money.
So the question you're asking is, if the business wasn't making any money, then where was the money coming from? How could he buy the incredible array of vintage Russian microphones that he still uses in the studio today, or the sound dampening material, or the headphones? The list goes on, right? Well, Mike funded it in the way so many scratch entrepreneurs do. He had a day job. Make money in the day, chase your passion at night.
The thing is that this business that I decided to start, a recording studio, is the worst business model that you can have. It probably doesn't get much worse than a recording studio, and I can explain why.
Yeah.
the overhead is astronomical. So if people don't know, like really nice recording equipment, one really nice mic costs anywhere between $2,000 to $20,000.
Right.
You need at least 16 to 20 mics. Then you need all the cabling, which can cost $5,000 to $10,000. Then you need a mixing console, which can cost $10,000 to $100,000. Then you need all the mic preamps. Then you need all the outboard gear. Then you need the instruments. Then you need the reverbs. Then you need amplifiers. It keeps going and going and going. It's a complete money pit. Then you need the building. Then you need the acoustic treatments. Then you need it to sound good. Then you need the computer. I mean,
and to attract the best bands, you need all the exact thing that they're looking for.
Right,
in
and you
all
need
those
and you
things.
need headphones. You don't need one. You need at least 6. Then you need a headphone amp. Then you need a headphone extension cable.
Yeah.
Then your cables break. You need more. And then there's maintenance and all this equipment. So in the end, like just to get the equipment you need, and I've been aggressively collecting equipment and going into debt since I was 15.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at about $300,000 just in equipment.
Yeah.
And you're just one guy. And then in the end, what are you charging for this?
Right.
Back in the day, this was all feasible, like in the 80s and 90s, when the only place to get a professional, like any recording done, was in a studio.
Right.
And they would charge $2,000 to $5,000 a day for their services.
You couldn't do it yourself. You couldn't,
Yeah,
hook up
or you could,
whatever.
but you couldn't get near the quality.
Yeah.
Now with all this digital recording and so many more bands wanting to record but without any budget, since the 90s, the rates for studio recording have plummeted. I mean, from $5,000 a day to $500 a day. Like, that's crazy, right? So suddenly, you can, and I can't charge even $500 a day here in the Midwest, on the coast.
Right,
but even on the coast, you'll find really nice studios charging $500 a day. So when you break it down, then you've got your overhead for the day, and then your time. And a studio day is typically like 10 to 12 hours a day.
Absolutely, yeah.
Here's the thing about a recording studio. The absolute most you can make in a day is what you charge for a day, which, for us is about $400. Whereas a restaurant or any retail store, they can have a good day. Like, we have a $3,000 day or a $10,000 day.
Right.
I can only make what I charge in a day, and it's just not enough.
Right.
Right? Like the best I can do is break even plus a little. Yeah, so that's why I almost went out of business lots of times. Yeah.
So then you're like, that's a pretty bleak picture, right?
Right.
Is that here's this scenario because of all things going on with music. We haven't even talked about how completed music gets sold today.
Yeah.
But like that picture's painted, and yet we're sitting in this studio that is absolutely beautiful. And you said you're now kind of figuring out a way to make money. So I would love it if you would first just describe the space that we're in right now, because I think it's fabulous, and your description might be better than mine.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm going to be battling trying to really describe it nicely and trying to be modest, but seriously, it's awesome.
It's beautiful. It's an amazing studio.
It is. It's basically my dream studio, and we're sitting in the control room. This is not a plug for my business, but seriously, if you want to see what we're talking about, you can go to www.russianrecording.com to see pictures. But we're in the control room, which is where I sit, where all the fancy equipment is, the mixing board, the computer, the speakers, and all the racks of equipment. And so we just did a renovation, so we expanded the room. There's a nice couch, some floor lamps, all that stuff to make you feel comfortable. And also in the building, there's the tracking rooms where the bands perform. And there's a big live room. It's about 25 by 20 with 17-foot ceilings. And there's a grand piano in there. That's often where we set up drums or a full band, full ensemble. And then there's 2 other what we call isolation rooms. There's the dead room, which sounds scary, but it's referring to the acoustics, that there's no reverberant sound, which is described as sounding dead. And then there's the live room, where the sound is very live and reverberant. So there's 3 rooms that you can record in. You can put amps or whatever in each room, and they have sound isolation between them. And then the room we're sitting in is where I record the music and listen back to it. The building, so this used to be Secretly Canadian, just a giant warehouse. Before that, I think it was some nut and bolt warehouse. Then after that, it became the Art Hospital, which was an art gallery / show space for a few years. And then when I heard the Art Hospital was moving out, I worked at IU as a audio preservation engineer for the School of Music, so I was transferring and archiving analog recordings, which allowed me, once that tape's rolling, I just sat there and was like, either played Scrabble or
Right, yeah.
And then I became obsessed with the idea of moving my studio from Brown County to Bloomington into a bigger space. And basically, this was just a huge warehouse, empty warehouse that I could build whatever I want inside. So I started obsessively researching studio construction, sound isolation, and all the stuff. And I just went in, took measurements of the space, and was kind of like, I'm just going to design a studio. I learned how to use Google SketchUp, like a 3D CAD program, and designed my own studio from scratch. And then submitted to the bank thinking there's no way. But I really pitched it hard and brought a stack of records I recorded and showing them like all the...
Like, this is for real.
Yeah, this is for real.
This forever.
Yeah, and I bring bands from out of town, all the stuff. This was right before the market crash in 2007, right?
Yeah.
And they gave me a loan, and I was literally like, oh shit, I'm gonna do this now. And it was, so I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the podcast yet, but we talked about that side of me that the part of as a business owner that is not good. The money side, the sort of like being practical and making smart decisions.
I've got the vision. It's going to be my dream studio. It's going to be awesome. I'm building the walls and everything. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care about the numbers.
Right.
Something about me is that I will always figure out a way to do it, no matter what, no matter how scary the thing is that I'm doing. It'll work itself out. It's that sort of like thing where like I'll figure it out later, but to like an alarming degree. Like
right, especially when you have a big loan.
I quit my job at IU with full benefits. I was technically faculty at IU. I just quit the job.
Wow.
Which I created this position myself. Actually, I was a grant funded position. I went through all the stuff to make it a full-time faculty position for security. Met with the dean of the School of Music and created a new position for myself, which was. Crazy, because then a year later I was like, actually I'm quitting and I'm going to build this studio. I went hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and did never once even, and I don't know how the bank approved it considering that I didn't even have a business plan. Nothing like that stuff I just don't even think about. And didn't consider the fact that it didn't add up.
So here we are sitting in a top-of-the-line recording studio. Mike and I had walked through before the interview. He showed me a 50s-era Russian ribbon microphone that could have amplified the voices of Russia's biggest political leaders. I walked singing from the band room to the dead room and listened to the change in my voice. Every detail of the space was beautiful and expensive. It's clear that Mike built his dream, and his passion for the perfect audio space drove everything. Maybe even just a little bit too far.
So I quit this job, I built the studio, and then business was mild to slow. Even when it was busy, it wasn't enough, and I was falling further and further behind. And then it was like a really bad spot where I was like maybe 7, 8, 9 months behind on rent. A bunch of bands canceled. You know, from a practical standpoint, is I wanted to create a world-class studio, like top of the line, equipment, space, the experience that the engineers have here, and make it affordable and accessible to Midwestern bands that otherwise could never afford something like this.
Yeah, and you did that, and everything on the creative side is here, from, the whole studio is here. Obviously you have all that, and so you've kind of built up to this question that really is the question, how do you do it? Like, how have you made it successful at this point?
Basically it wasn't successful. It was probably going to bomb. And then my cat got famous. Right? So she saved my ass, pretty much. So I never tried for Bub to get famous. It wasn't my intention. It really happened sort of overnight. It wasn't overnight. It was sort of gradual, but the big explosion happened at the worst time of my life. I was getting ready to go bankrupt. I was trying to find someone to buy my studio, or I was going to sell all the equipment. My car had broken down. The radiator blew up. Someone slashed all my tires. Just a guy went down the street slashing tires here. I sold a piece of equipment on eBay and it was fraudulent, so I lost the equipment and had to give back the money. All this stuff was happening at once, and this girl dumped me, and I was just like, I had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't go like a few hours without losing it, being hysterical. My friends were taking care of me, and one day I woke up, and I had a blog for Bub just for fun because people liked her, and my friend was like, hey, your Bub is on the front page of Reddit, so this photo went viral from the blog, and at the same time we'd made t-shirts for Bub. My friend David Woodruff had designed one, and he's a friend and plays in bands in town and stuff, and it was just for fun. He'd made one for his cat Smoosh, and then we made one for Bub, and we just made him it was like we were tongue-in-cheek, sort of like pretending like our cats were actual celebrities, but then mine actually became one, like really fast. And we had these t-shirts. They were cool shirts. David's an amazing designer. So on our blog, all these people are like looking at it. And I was like, hey, we made these shirts if you want to pre-order one. And we got tons of pre-orders. Wow. And like stuff got weird really fast. And then, just when you think that's it, then BuzzFeed writes an article, then we're on Good Morning America, and people are asking for postcards and buttons and all this stuff. And that's where the entrepreneurial spirit really came in handy.
Yeah.
When I was, it's that same thing from when I was a little kid, collecting berries and just having that sort of a knack for like figuring out. I was like, I've got sort of experience with this. Like I know how to do this well and tastefully. And so, I asked David, you want to design more stuff? I started an online store. You figure stuff out on your own, figure out how to get things shipped and all this stuff, and really understanding what people want and creating it. And then Lil Bub eventually became a business. It took me a really long time to like admit this. Like it was hard for me. My passion was the studio and playing in bands and this stuff. And then my cat gets famous, and I was like, I don't want to be known as a guy that just had the famous cat. Yeah. And that sort of framed how I did the Bub thing, that it was all about her and really thinking like, what did she mean to people? I wanted there to be substance. I wanted there to be a message. And so I realized like this Bub is providing something that people really need, which is like a break from all the bullshit in the world, politics. Yeah. She's an inspiration to me. I mean, the reason I started a blog is that I was obsessed with her. Like that's the only reason I took photos and videos, is I couldn't believe that this creature existed. Like I have 4 other cats and I've always shared photos, but Bub was truly magical.
Because Bub wasn't supposed to make it, right? She really has a story of growing out of like,
perseverance. And it's still going today. Like she's we just came back from the Purdue Vet Hospital yesterday. Like there's constantly stuff with her, and we don't need to get into all that.
Sure.
No vet, no expert ever knows. There's always new stuff coming up, and it's like she's almost not from this planet. We don't know what's going on. Yeah. But I've made a priority, especially the main thing was when we were selling all the stuff, was I started an emergency fund for Bub. Yeah. She's an outrageously expensive animal to take care of, but it's all. She's a magical creature. She knows what she's doing. I kind of let her pave the way for the whole Bub thing, and I was just there to facilitate it, sort of like a manager. That she kind of hired me without me applying for the job, and I just did my best to sort of, hey, this is the priority, is to have money to make sure she's got all the vet care she needs, and then the charitable stuff we do was the next priority, and then realizing like, oh man, this has turned into a business now. It's taking up all my time. Yeah. People really are into this, and that's when I learned the stuff that I wasn't good at, which was like, but even then I dove in with the Bub stuff head first. Like I took a loan and dropped, I think in the second year, $200,000 loan to create merchandise. Wow. For the holiday season coming up. Yeah. Which was just insane, right?
But you saw the vision of it and why it made sense.
And I learned to start crunching numbers. I hired an accountant. I did all this stuff. And, and I learned a lot. Like my accountant was like, Mike, you're giving away way too much to charity. Your business is going to fail. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I see. I can't just give it all away. So I started figuring it out. And then we had a family. And then I learned about salaries and all this stuff. Yeah. But in the end, I mean, I got very lucky. But like I said, I've always had this attitude, like, I'll figure something out. Yeah, and absolutely. I got lucky that the Bub thing happened. And it figured it out for me. It was able to bail out the studio. And then I learned to sort of invest in other things. And what I've learned is that it's important. And honestly, I'm not an expert on this. I've gotten lucky and I've kind of learned along the way. But what I'm learning now is just diversifying and having various sources of income at the same time. Yeah. So that's why, you know, we're renovating the upstairs of the studio, making it into an Airbnb, and doing all these things. So now the studio is self-sufficient. I still have never paid myself.
Yeah.
I've been recording bands since 1995, and I've never paid myself. All the money goes right back in the studio. And in that sense, it's a good investment. I'm out of debt with the studio, and it now pays for itself.
Right.
And I've got 2 guys working here, and that's the point with the studio, really, is to provide the best service to bands that couldn't otherwise afford it, and for it not to go out of business. That's the main thing.
Are there lessons, specific stories of lessons that you've learned the hard way beyond what we've already talked about? Or,
Yeah, I have that. I have that story.
Yeah.
With Bub.
Yeah.
Like I said previously, like I feel like Bub sort of, it's Bub's thing. It's hard for people to stomach this kind of stuff, but not stomach, but to believe it. But as the person who's been there from the very beginning, from seeing her for the first time, taking her home, discovering that she has all these physical abnormalities, like she's literally 1 in a trillion. Yeah. That might be generous. Like and then seeing her just skyrocket to fame with barely any effort on my part, and then taking a passive stance to it, where I said, I made rules. I'm not going to pursue this myself. I'm only going to consider opportunities when they come to us organically. I'm going to take a strict stance that anything we do has to have a charitable aspect to it, that I have full creative control, and that in any case, I get, no matter what we're doing, whether it's a national TV show, which I didn't even think would happen, but did, that I work with my friends creatively, and if any of those things don't line up, then I'm out.
Yeah.
And that's the way I did it. So I made it as hard as possible for it to become successful, because I was like, I only want this to happen if it's genuine and meets all this criteria. Otherwise, I don't feel good about it, right? Because this is about Bub. It has to be real. And so that actually worked amazingly well. There's nothing more powerful than saying no when somebody wants something, because then you get whatever you want.
Yeah, then it's amazing how then they really want it, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also, you know, when someone seeks you out, you're in a position of leverage, which I didn't realize then. I just stuck to my rules, and I was just like, oh no, I'm sorry, you know, book deals were coming at us left and right, and I was like, yeah, only if I can pick my photographer, if I can write the whole book and design everything myself and whatever. And 1 or 2 publishers were like, oh, okay, well, it's not going to work. That's not how it works. I was like, okay, that's fine. I don't have to write a book. I never wanted to write a book, so I'm in the position I was in the first place. Yeah. But then, you know, Penguin was like, yeah, sure, okay, let's do it. Yeah. So, and that happened with Animal Planet. We did a TV special, made the craziest show ever in the world, me and my friend Mark. They only aired it once. It's so crazy. But it stars Andrew W.K. and Amy Sedaris. It's like, and we filmed it in 10 hours, the whole thing. Wow. Amy Sedaris didn't learn the lines. I had to feed lines to her. It was a crazy experience. I mean, and me and my friend Mark were directing it together, and we wrote it. It was just insane. So what I'm getting to here is the mistakes, right? So no one wrote a manual on how to do this. Yeah. And constantly I'm thinking, like, you know, opportunities, especially 2013, 2014, are just like being dumped on us. Like I said, we did an Animal Planet TV special. You know, I had to learn how to like read contracts. I had to hire a lawyer. Like it got really intense, really fast, and I had to really keep my values at the forefront and keep thinking. And you know, so we did this one thing. We got asked to do YouTube's live comedy festival or something. It was 2014, 2015. They're going to fly us out to LA. It was a star-studded event. They're going to launch this whole new comedy channel thing. You know, Sarah Silverman, Seth Rogen. It was just crazy. There's a ton of people, and you know, I brought my friend Jonathan, my friend Mark, who did the Animal Planet special, and he also co-created Lil Bub's Big Show with me. and my friend Pete Schreiner. And we all went out to do this YouTube thing, and our skit was with Jack McBrayer. Do you know Jack? 30 Rock.
Okay.
He's the bellboy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
So Jack McBrayer, it was a skit with Jack McBrayer and the guys from Workaholics. Do you know that show? It's like it's a Comedy Central show.
Okay. So Jack Brayer, Workaholics,
yeah,
and Bub.
And Bub, and it was like the skit was stupid, and I was trying to, I always make sure like Bub is safe. We only do this and whatever, this and that. And this is like our first big like Hollywood. There's like big directors, big stage. There's going to be like 5,000 people in the audience. Already, I'm kind of like, I don't know if Bub's going to be okay with this.
Yeah.
The thing about Bub is she's unlike other cats. She loves traveling. She loves being around people. She doesn't really get nervous. Big loud sounds are the main thing that make her nervous.
Yeah.
And I told them, and in the past I've been really good. Like when we were on The View, I was like, hey, you can't applaud, no applause. It's live television. She's going to freak out. None of us want that. So I was like, just have people say aw or ooh. And they did that, and it went really well,
Cool. Yeah.
And in this situation, it was more of like a high pressure situation, move in and out, dress rehearsals. And we're doing this thing, and Bub was going to be on this pedestal. I was going to be low. And I was already uncomfortable with that. But those Hollywood guys have a way of, and I was kind of like, there can't be loud noises. There can't be this. But I kind of let myself be like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then when the show came, and the skit was stupid too. Like I didn't particularly like it. There was a full audience, and they were clapping, and she was distressed.
Yeah.
Nothing bad happened. She didn't fall off, but it was live, and people were watching. People said she looked upset, and I had to say, you know what? You're right. She was upset, and I failed. That was not. I lost sight of what my job was, which is to make sure she was never in fear, her health was never compromised, and it was 2 minutes. It wasn't a big deal, but it was a huge like sort of red flag to me, like, hey, you need to reevaluate and you need to be even more strict, because I'm super strict about that stuff, and I felt bad that I let that happen.
It's funny because what I get from you and all I've heard about Lil Bub and what I know of you and this conversation right here is that all your priorities are right. That you're protecting her, that this is just coming to you, and you're trying to figure out, how do I make this happen in a way that's fair, reasonable, take advantage of an opportunity. I mean, it seemed like at the beginning maybe you didn't really even want to take advantage of the opportunity. You were almost resistant.
Well,
is
I feel
that
weird.
true?
It's like not even taking advantage of the opportunity, but seizing the opportunity's there.
Right.
So don't like.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it, sort of. So but make the most of it. Yeah.
But so many people would have gone so much further, so much more quickly, and not put Lil Bub in the front. And I hear from you over and over again that you have not done that you have always put Lil Bub in the front and let her drive. And I think that's the power of what you're doing. And as far as the entrepreneurship side, such an amazing scenario to have something so viral that so many people want, and you're in the position not of finding people who want your product, but figuring out how to manage something that so many people want.
Yeah.
That's kind of the entrepreneur side. So, I mean, I feel like you've managed this whole thing really, really well and really authentically,
Yeah, I think, and one thing I thought of earlier is I think that for me, it's not about making money. Like that's not the goal, and shouldn't be. I think a lot of people are like, how do I make a lot of money? For me, it's like, how do I do what I want and find a way to monetize that so I can keep doing it? You know what I mean? It's like, I think a lot of people who are like, I want to start a business, their thought is, how do I make a lot of money? And that's, it's not, I don't think that's wrong, and I think a lot of people are successful at doing that. But then the focus of the business is to make money.
Right.
Whereas for me, the focus of my studio is to record bands, and the focus of Bub is to bring joy to people and raise money. Honestly, I didn't know what the focus of that was, because it wasn't my idea.
It wasn't your idea, yeah.
It was my cat's idea, so so I kind of went with it. And it's funny, like interviewing, because we started the first National Fund for Special Needs Pets, and it has never been my goal to start a fund for special needs pets. I found, like retroactively, same with all my cats, I found out, they're all special needs. They're all feral cats. They're all adopted. It wasn't on purpose. That's just sort of kind of how they all found me.
Yeah.
And I realized that's really important to me. And sure, we could do this fund, but it's never been like, I'm going to start a fund or I'm going to do all this charitable work. It all sort of just happened.
You were always going to be an audio guy, right?
Yeah, I decided that a long time ago.
Anything we missed in the conversation, any burning things, maybe advice you wanted to give to other folks who are entrepreneurs or other folks who find themselves in a viral situation? I mean, very few people have experienced what you've experienced with just something that went viral by accident almost.
Yeah.
Any advice for folks?
Well, one thing is I think things going viral is always by accident. And I think it's how you handle it. Man, it's hard to give advice on something like that.
Yeah.
I will say that so they talk about the dopamine effect of just Facebook and every time you get a like. So when something goes viral like that, imagine it multiplied by 100,000. Like, it becomes insane. I think it's important not to get too carried away with that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing I did, was like, try not to let it go to my head. And I got lucky because it was about Bub, so I was able to just like, this is about her, and I'm just sort of handling this and figuring out what to do with it. It's different when it happens to you. But I think the important thing is I guess with anything in life is always like take a step back and try and reflect on what's going on and what you want out of this and make that your priority.
Yeah, and I think being authentic.
Yep, that's the main thing.
I think that over and over again you see people who aren't authentic and they lose it, and people who just are who they are, and we love them for whatever reason it is that we love them in the first place. If folks want to find you or Bub, how do they do so?
The easiest is for Russian recording is russianrecording.com. Lil Bub is lilbub.com. It's very easy to find contact info if you want to send me a message, or you're interested in studio time, or have questions about my special cat.
Cool. Well, Mike, it's just been a pleasure to sit here and chat with you. I feel like you're doing awesome work on both sides, and I feel like you're an example of creativity just being what it is and trying to make a business out of it and trying to make that work. And so thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for the great charities that you're donating money, that Lil Bub is donating to, and that you're growing, and I feel like you're doing great work with everything. So thank you.
Appreciate that. It was fun.
Special thanks to Mike Bridavsky for taking the time to share the Russian recording and Lil Bub's story with us. This episode was edited and produced by me, Jeremy Goodrich, and the music was by Mark Vinton. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple of things we need you to do right now. First, subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you can hear future episodes as soon as we release them. While you're there, please give the show a review. We'd love to know what you liked, what you didn't, and what you want to hear next. Until the next time, we truly appreciate you listening.